Are there certain preachers or books that have had a big influence on you?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there have been many influences. I mentioned that when I was about 7 years old, that my dad began preaching, and he was Independent Baptist, and I heard very early from him that he was a landmarker, and I'm thankful for that. I was influenced, of course, by the Baptist papers, that I would often read, in books. When I was 13 years old, I began to be handed books such as by J.R. Graves and Roscoe Braun, and read those. And but backing up a little, as a small child, before I was saved, I often heard many preachers from the pulpit, such as Roscoe Braun. In fact, he was the head interrogator when Daddy was ordained to preach. Brother Braun helped me pick out my first Bible in the bookstore, and then years later, he helped me with picking out the one here that I often preach from. And still later, I went back and bought one like it for who's now my wife. And so I was acquainted with him from way back. I heard Clarence Walker often, and Carl Sadler, and got to know Carl Sadler real well. Had him for a teacher for a few Bible college classes. Often heard men like Bill Cozy, Roy Mason, preaching at Bible conferences. And again, some of those were before I was saved, but by God's grace, He gave me hearing, physical hearing, and ability to retain some things that would mean much more later. And I'm very thankful for those. Just as in over in 2 Timothy, Paul made mention of the unfeigned faith that was in Timothy's grandmother and mother, Lois and Eunice. And then made mention also a few chapters later that about what that he could see in Timothy also. I bring up this to say that the earlier hearing without spiritual ears, but being blessed by God's grace to retain some things that even now stick out in my mind years later, after I was given spiritual ears to hear. I believe it's very important that small children be included in the assembly of God's people, God's churches. That we be not so quick to stick them off in a nursery or children's church and those kinds of things. They hear more than we think, and it will stick with them better than we think. They need to learn how to act in the Lord's house. Then getting back to people that were an influence later on, after I was saved, well, actually before that, I was well acquainted with Berlin Hassel, and heard him preach many times. He was guest in our home many times, even for weeks at a time. And so I was in on many conversations about Bible and Baptist doctrine. Later, Berlin was a teacher in some of the Bible colleges around, and I had a loose leaf notebook of Brother Hassel's notes that he used in teaching Baptist history, and that really got me started more deeply in the study of Baptist history. He had a large library and a fairly large bibliography in that notebook. I used it as a shopping list in getting some of those books, old books, and digging a little deeper into them. And then I was also from long ago acquainted with Brother Harold Harvey and Curtis Pugh, Milburn Cockrell, and Al Gormley, Bill DeRosset. I had some good visits and times with them, and many phone conversations and emails, and those meant much. I've become acquainted later with Brother Tom Ross and his preaching and his writing and his books, which have been very valuable. And I'm very thankful for the many opportunities that I was blessed with over the years, going all the way back many years.